everyone, I'm Monique and I'm back today with a new layout celebrating Rebecca Moore reaching 1,500 subscribers on YouTube. So we're having a fun celebratory hop for her and I'm going to be scrap lifting this fun layout of hers. As soon as I saw this sheet of pretty pattern paper, I knew that I wanted to add color to those flowers. So I've added a layer of transparent gesso on top of that sheet of pattern paper, and that's going to allow me to add a little bit of mixed media to it without the paper warping too much. So originally I had planned to do a very different layout. I was going to scrap lift a wreath layout that Rebecca has done, but I did change my mind. However, I'm going to still be using all these florals, so this part is not wasted. So I've taken out a whole array of distress inks in a big variety of colors, and I'm just stamping them onto a piece of plastic packaging, adding a little bit of water with my paintbrush, and then taking that color and adding it onto those florals. So I'm focusing on having more intense color in the center of the flower and then fading it out towards the edges. Now, as you probably have guessed, I'm going to be working my way through the rainbow. So I'm going to be doing a huge variety of colors, starting off with red, moving through all the rainbow colors until I reach pink and purple towards the end. This is really such a simple way to add a little bit of color to black and white patterned papers, and I think it's really effective, and I love the watercolor effect of these diluted distress inks. While I'm busy painting, I thought I would take the chance to tell you a little bit about this hop. So we are so excited that Rebecca has reached 1,500 subscribers. It wasn't that long ago that I took part in my first YouTube hop, and it was to celebrate her reaching 500 subscribers. So she's come a long way in a very short time, and we are so delighted for her. So there's a whole group of us. If you click on the description box below, you will find all the links to all the other videos. We're all scrap lifting one of her lovely layouts and just joining in lots of fun to celebrate her great achievement. So do have a look in the description box and pop along to all the other channels where you'll find lots of creative inspiration. Now, rainbows might not be your thing, so you could pick any color scheme that you favor to do the same method with. And if you don't have distress inks, you can use many other different mediums. So you could use watercolors, or you could use gelatos, or really any type of ink where you can add water to it to dilute it, which would give you a watercolor effect. What I like about the distress inks or watercolors is that you can still see the markings of that patterned paper through them. So the color that I'm adding on is still translucent, so you don't lose the detail of the patterned paper in the background. Now I'm just about done. I did jump forward a few colors just to see how many I'd have left to work out what colors I was going to do in between. I didn't plan it too perfectly, but it all works out. And you may have noticed that I do mix some of the colors together, and with this method it makes it really, really easy to blend colors together, because you can just stamp two colors down and then add a little bit of water and mix them together to get a totally new and unique shade. So you could totally get away with using a lot fewer colors than I've got there in my distress inks by just mixing colors together. Now at this point I've changed my mind and I've decided to do the layout that I showed you earlier on that I'm scrap lifting of Rebecca's, and I've taken this sheet of patterned paper. It's a very old Amy Tangerine sheet of patterned paper, and I've had it for quite a while, and I'm just cutting it into strips, and I want them to be slightly different lengths. I'm not too worried if they're the exact same width, but I am kind of going for a similar width. And I initially cut out 6, but I do only end up using 5, and I'm just going to be distressing those edges. I am being quite rough with my scissors. I want the edges to be really, really textured, and I want to see a fair bit of the white edges peeking through. Now I'm taking those florals and I'm kind of working in a rainbow sequence. So I do red at the top left, then down with the orange, up with the yellow, and then I cluster them in sequence around the photo, with the final one being like a purple violet color at the top there. So at this point I'm just having a play to see what it looks like, and now I'm going to stick those strips down now that I kind of have an idea in my head of what it's going to look like. So I'm just putting a thin strip of my tape runner down the center of each of those, slightly offsetting each of those strips so that they're not all perfectly lined up. And although I am making sure that the gap between them is a similar width for each one. Now I want to add some stitching. I do 3 rows of stitching down the center of each of those strips, and then I kind of raise up each of the edges. Now if you don't have a sewing machine or you don't fancy doing any hand stitching, you could get a similar effect by doodling a gold line with a gold pen down the center of each one. I've done that with another layout before where I really didn't feel like sewing, so I just used a gold pen to doodle a border. I'll link that up for you below in case you want to see that technique. It's a great way to add a little bit of interest without the time-consuming aspect of adding some stitching. And this stitching did take a little while because my gold thread snapped about 3 times with each strip that I stitched. I think it was a combination of the adhesive and the type of thread, but my machine just wasn't enjoying it. So as you will have seen while I was chatting away, I used a piece of that lovely wood grain. It's from Chamel's Never Grow Up collection, and they are my last pieces. I really need more of this before I can't get any more. I hope I can still get some. It's my all-time favorite wood grain. Anyway, I've cut a piece that's slightly bigger than my photo. I'm not sure yet if it's going to be directly behind my photo or if I'm going to have a bit more peeking out, but we'll see as the layout progresses. So now I'm just coming back in with those florals and sticking them back in place as I usually do, on off until I'm happy. And I think I'm happy. I'm just spend a little bit of time with that kind of green cluster on the left, trying to get that to work. Now I've got this lovely acrylic piece that I'm going to be using for my title. It says Family, and it is a lovely font, and I think it just works really, really nicely. And I now want to bring in some of that wood grain behind those blue strips. So I've got some of that wood grain in a washi, so I'm using that, and then I've also got a thin washi tape that has got some gold foliage on it, which is a really lovely subtle hint of gold, which I really, really like. So I'm adding strips of that to a few spots behind those florals, and I do quite like the effect. However, because the blue strips are so distressed, I feel like the washi tape doesn't have as much texture as I would like it to. So stay tuned. I do something to those strips, but you'll see that in a short while. I'm also going to add a little bit of gold stitching around my photo just to echo the stitching that's in the background. I really do love the gold stitching and the hints of gold. Now, when I take that photo off and I see that wood grain piece, I just love it. But obviously my layout has to have a photo, so I can't not put the photo back there, but I do decide at this point that I'm going to offset my photo so that I can see more of that wood grain in the background. However, I do cover up that lovely knot in the wood there, which I absolutely love, so I'm quite sad to be covering that. Anyway, what I'm doing now is I'm adding some vellum to the back of my photos. I've got kind of 2 layers around each of the sides. So I start off by putting one piece behind the entire photo with torn edges, and then I tear 4 little strips which I put around each of the 4 sides, just to kind of give a bit of a nice textured layered effect. Now here is where I decide that washi tape is just not doing it for me, and I take my last little piece of 6x8 wood grained pattern paper from this collection, and I cut little strips and tear it and distress it to tuck in, and I'm much happier with that. Now I do want to keep that gold washi tape, however it's not quite right directly on top of the wood grain, so I'm going for some vellum just to kind of tie in with the background of the photo, and I want to add a little layer there just for some added textural layer detail. And then I'm going to come back in once this is all stuck down and add that washi tape that I had originally used, but I'm going to tuck it in quite far behind that blue strip, so you really just see a teeny tiny little peak of that gold sticking out. Now that that's stuck down, I just check with my little floral stuck back in there, and I decide I want to add a little bit more vellum, but this time layered over the floral. So I'm going to come back in with a piece of vellum, a thin little strip that's torn on the one side, and stick that over the red rose. Now once that's stuck down, you're going to see me fiddling with that piece of gold washi tape that I told you about, just sticking that in, removing the rose, getting that tucked in. You can barely see it, but I do like the effect in real life, seeing that little slither of gold peeking out. I'm going to start sticking my florals down now. I do stick one little piece down with my tape runner, but All the other pieces I use my silicone glue for, just to add a little bit of extra height and dimension. And so you can see there I've put a really thin strip that's going to be going directly under the blue strip, and then where I want there to be more dimension, I add more chunky layer of adhesive. So I'm just tucking all of those in and making sure that they're all raised up and sticking well. Now the one thing with silicone glue is it doesn't dry immediately. It takes quite a while, and what I do on a number of occasions with this layout is press down on bits that I've stuck down, and then the glue all comes squelching out and I make a huge big mess. So one thing that I always find quite handy to have on hand is some cotton buds, and those are able to get into like the little corners, and that just to kind of mop up any glue that squelches out. I really am quite a messy crafter. If my desk starts off tidy, it is always a huge mess by the end of a layout, and I usually end up surrounded by so many craft supplies and make myself crazy because I can't find things that I had just a couple seconds ago. And I'm sure some of you can relate to that, but I am by no means tidy at all when it comes to creating. Now I'm much preferring this more textured look using the strips of wood grained pattern paper and the pieces of vellum, and I'm just really curling up those edges so that there's no kind of sharp edges or corners. And I'm just adding that wood grain pattern paper to 3 areas. When I had used the washi tape, I did 4 little groupings of it, but I've just done 3 now when I've used the wood grain pattern paper. So 1 on the extreme left, 1 on the extreme right, and 1 on the right at the top. And I'm just working through those, adding the vellum and then sticking it all down. Now I really love this photo. It's not the best quality photo. I took a few, but this was the nicest one, but the quality is not great at all. But I just love the expressions of my hubby and my kids in this photo. We were away for a long weekend with friends, and we were just having such a great time, and it was just such a happy moment, and I really wanted to scrap this photo. Now I'm going to be fiddling for a while here, just getting everything stuck down, sticking down that last little strip of wood grain paper before now mounting this cute photo. I am using some craft foam, which I'm adding some tape to, and then sticking it onto that wood grain piece, just ensuring that I've got a good chunk of it sticking out the side and the top. And now when I'm adding those florals in, I'm trying to be mindful not to cover it, but I also don't want to be like cutting it off, and I don't want it to look strange, so I'm trying to get the positioning just right so that I'm happy with how it looks. Because my background is a bit textured with that pattern paper behind it with all the ruffled edges, I'm using my wet adhesive to stick down my photo and the mount. I love using the Nouveau Deluxe adhesive. It's really sticky and it dries relatively quickly, and the nozzle never gets clogged, which is my favorite thing. So now I'm just going to be sticking down all these florals with the silicone glue. I do chop some of the florals in half just so that they fit well behind the stuck down bits and pieces, and then I can always use those other half cut off pieces for another layout at another point in time as well. I do go in and prune some of those florals, cutting off some buds and little leaves that I feel are getting a little bit too cluttered over there and blocking some of the color of that green floral. And then I just carry on working with this blue little cluster on the bottom right hand corner, and just slowly working my way through. I do spend quite some time doing this, bit of a slow process, but I get there in the end. Now I'm just about done. I just need to add that purple floral in, and then a little strip of vellum peeking over it and coming down the bottom behind that blue cluster. I really do love the softness that vellum adds. I love that you can still see some of the pattern paper in the background, and that it just adds an extra layer of texture. And now I'm coming in with some extra little fussy cut leaves, which I'm just adding in, peeking out just to add even more texture and interest. And I'm just sticking those down with some wet glue. I'm not going to be tackling the silicone with these. I feel like that'll be challenging my skills at putting the silicone on very delicately, and I'm not very delicate when it comes to silicone. Now I've got this little memories piece, and I'm just trying to make it work, but I just can't find the right place for it. So I do end up settling just for the title to say family. And now I'm coming in with some fussy cut butterflies from Vicky Bouton's Colour Study collection. I'm using the piece of pattern paper from her 6x8 paper pad, which has all those lovely butterflies, the same as the 12x12 paper 12x12 sheets, except they're much smaller and they work really well with this layout. I love how they just kind of tie in with the florals, and they're really subtle. So I'm just adding 3 little butterflies, making a triangle around my photo, and then I do kind of work on those clusters and build them up a little bit more with a few extra little bits and pieces. So the first thing I'm going to add is a little twiddle of gold thread. I kind of despise making twiddles with the gold thread. It's so slippery and it doesn't stay, and it kind of pops out of the formation that you put it in. So I've opted to kind of twist it around my finger and make a more uniformed circular cluster of thread rather than a little tangled bundle. I'm not too successful in getting tangled bundles with the gold thread because it's so slippery. So I've done that underneath each of the 3 butterflies, and now I'm just adding a little tab in that has the date, which I didn't do a great job of stamping, so I stamped over it again, and it looks a bit messy, but the date, it tells us the date, so that's the most important thing. Now I've got this sheet of clear stickers from Paige Evans' Wonders collection, and they're these lovely little gold leaf stickers. So I'm just dotting those in the little floral clusters just to add a hint of gold. And now I've got these lovely little gold hearts from Pear Tree Cut Files, and again I'm just adding 1 to each of those clusters, making my little triangle around my photo. And I love that little pop of gold. It's just kind of highlighting that gold thread. And now I'm going to be going in and adding a little bit of gold splatters in those 3 clusters as well. Now I'm very, very close to being finished. I love the effect of the shimmery gold, and I'm really liking the texture that that's adding. But I want to add one more thing. So I'm coming in with these lovely little sequins. They're called Butterscotch, and I love this color. It is such a lovely kind of neutral color. It's almost like a translucent gold, and it works really, really well for autumnal type layouts, for adding a little bit of kind of not too shiny gold, if that makes sense. And I've just added a few to those 3 clusters. Again, the sequins come in 3 sizes, so there's a teeny tiny one, a medium sized one, and a large one, and I love the differentiation of these. So here is a close-up of all those details and all the texture. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed this today and that you've seen something that inspires you to create. If you've enjoyed this video, I'd be so grateful if you give it a thumbs up and you subscribe to my channel, and please do pop down to the description box below and check out all the other creative channels and all the inspiration they've got to share. You can also find me on Instagram at Handmade Happy by Monique. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!